Jona, and welcome back to Musical of the Month. This month I'm going to be talking about Aida. Aida is a pop musical with music and lyrics by Elton John and Tim Rice. Yes, that is the same team that brought us The Lion King. Aida was produced by Disney, and it was their first Broadway production that wasn't based on one of their films. Instead of being based on one of Disney's films, it's actually based on an 1871 opera. The opera was actually by one of the most famous European composers at the time, Giuseppe Verdi. And I might not be saying that right. The main storyline of Aida is something that we're all very familiar with, especially if you watch Girl Meets World. Yes, it's a love triangle. There's a triangle between Aida, Radames, and Amneris. Basically, it all starts when Aida, who was actually the princess of Nubia, is captured by an Egyptian captain named Radames. Upon being captured, Aida is actually given to the pharaoh's daughter, Amneris. I'm not going to get too much into the story because I really want you guys to explore it yourselves, but it's really good. The theme of the show is basically just love and all that love means. The relationship between love and death, the power of love, and the fight between true love and having a higher purpose. So how was Aida made? How did it come to be? After the success of The Lion King, Disney was super eager to work with Sir Elton John and Tim Rice yet again. At the time, the presidents of Buena Vista Theatrical Group really wanted to make Aida into an animated film because they had the rights to a book. But Elton John and Tim Rice had just come off of doing an animated film and they wanted a new challenge, which is why the project shifted to a live musical. So they put aside that children's book that they had acquired the rights to and hired Linda Wolverton to write a new book. Linda chose to focus on the Egyptian story rather than the opera from 1871. Among the changes that came about were Aida became the main character and her homeland moved to Nubia. And that also made Amneris and Aida friends, which I think definitely makes the story a lot deeper. So as Linda was writing the book, she left spaces where she thought a song could fit and would leave notes for Tim Rice based on what she thought it should be like. Tim Rice would then write his lyrics kind of based on her prompt, but more in tune with his own feelings. Tim did write the lyrics in sequence, but things were moved around as the project evolved. Now Elton John likes to write tunes to lyrics rather than lyrics to tunes. So Tim Rice would write the lyrics, send them to Elton John, and Elton John would send them back complete with music. In April 1996, there was the first workshop of Aida, and only 6 of the 21 songs were complete, and it was very informal. They just used music stands, there wasn't really much staging. And to this day, the only song that remains pretty much the same is The Gods Love Nubia. A second workshop was done a little bit later that year in November, and 2 acts were performed. Now the third workshop was in the spring of 1997, and usually that's when investors and sponsors look in, but this was just more to see what changes they still need to make. Then it was time for a production at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta, which now meant that a cast and creative team were assembled and ready to go. At this point, the show was not named Aida, it was named Elaborate Lives, which is a song in the musical. The musical ran in Atlanta from September 17th to November 8th, 1998. And at this point, there were a lot of technical errors that needed to be fixed. In fact, there was one night now known as the night the lights went out in Georgia. It was during their first preview in Atlanta, and just in the middle of the show, suddenly everything went black, and the show came to a stop, a complete stop. The stage manager, Alan, was very persistent. He did not want to send everyone home. He wanted to complete the show. So the cast ended up doing all the songs and all of the scenes in sort of a concert style with no staging, no costume changes, just stand and sing, stand and act. Even after that insane night, the musical did really well in Atlanta, but there were still no plans to move to Broadway just yet. So the show moved to Chicago with a brand new creative team. Robert Falls was brought on and he replaced Robert Roth. And Bob Crowley came on to do intentionally less complicated sets and costumes. The musical director, the lighting designer, and the sound designer were still on from Atlanta, but everything else was pretty much changing. The main issue was that the script really needed to strike a better balance between comedy and tragedy. And Robert Falls really wanted to make the story the focus instead of being like, look at us, this is a big, glitzy Broadway production. So to find the balance that they needed, Robert Falls ended up looking to Shakespeare. And he brought on David Henry Hwang to help him write. Despite all of this, a lot of Linda's original work remained consistent, though it became a little bit more adult. December 9th, 1999, the show opened in Chicago and ran for 8 weeks without any changes. plans for Broadway started to slowly creep in. One of the problems that they had was making Aida's relationship with Radames believable. How do you make someone fall in love with the person that captured them from their home? Radames really needed a better introduction, so they included a new song called Fortune Favors the Brave, which is one of my favorites from the show. And many changes took place musically and staging-wise. A full-on ballet that was originally at the beginning of the show was cut. They made Enchantment Passing Through a duet, and they switched the singer of Elaborate Lives from Aida to Radames, which was a really emotional change for everybody, especially Adam Pascal, who originated the role of Radames. He loved Heather's approach to it, as did the cast and crew. I really like the way Elaborate Lives fits into the show, and I think that they made the right decision. Changes were non-stop. Non-stop! Wrong musical. Every little change that you make starts a chain reaction. Every change in the score requires reprogramming of the sound system. And every single change in choreography and blocking meant that some of the swing performers had to relearn 8 tracks. Despite all of the changes and all of the chaos, on March 23rd, 2000, the show opened at the Palace Theater on Broadway. Something really special that happened that opening night is that 2 ensemble members that met through the show announced that they were going to have a baby. I just think that is such a perfect example of just the family that a show can build. Heather Headley and Sherry Renee Scott, who are Aida and Amaris, were the only 2 that survived the entire journey to Broadway. In fact, Sherry Renee Scott was there for the very first workshop. She made it the entire way. Here's a fun fact. Most of the cast microphones were built into wigs. Aida went on to win 4 Tony Awards. Best Music and Lyrics, Elton John and Tim Rice. Best Actress, Heather Headley. Best Scenic Design, Bob Crowley. And Best Lighting Design to Natasha Katz. Since its Broadway run back in 2000, the show has gone on to touch many people's lives. I was fortunate enough to actually see the show last week. Something really cool about the production that I saw was Emmy Raver Lampin from the original cast of Hamilton was actually Aida. She was mind-blowingly incredible. She got so many standing ovations and the audience was just so fired up. It was so special. It was my first time seeing the show and I left just like with the songs in my head and I was like, that was so much fun. Even though the ending is a bit sad, I just felt so moved. Something really interesting about it was that it didn't seem like 2.5 hours. Something about it was just so well paced. My attention was constantly grabbed. I learned to care about all of the characters. I was rooting for everybody. Research the story and see it if you can. A lot of high schools do this show. I think that sometimes Aida is overlooked in the musical theater community. People used to call me the encyclopedia of musicals and I knew Aida, but I didn't know Aida. You know what I mean? I wasn't super familiar with it. So I really encourage you to look into it and get into it. I love you all. Stay beautiful, you people. I have next month's musical planned already, so definitely get excited for that. Bye! Bye, 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 bye. Oh, this book is so cool. This picture of Heather is so powerful. If you want all of the information about this musical, definitely get this book. It is amazing.